while those are drying and we're figuring out what grays we want to use, and take a clean piece of paper and we'll start working on the sketch for the object that we want to paint. Now I think I'm going to do the little sugar bowl. And so the way I do this, I rarely start on my good paper. I usually start on a piece of, this is called sketch paper, and it's tracing paper that's on a roll. And I for some reason, I like the tan better than the white, but if you have just plain tracing paper, that works as well. You know, just, you can buy it in notepad, pad packs. And the reason I start here is because I can make my mistakes on this paper, and I can get all my sketching, my perspective, all of that done on this, and then I can transfer it to my good paper. So I usually lay out my good paper, and if it's a bigger piece than this, I'll probably tape it down. But that way I make sure, anyway, I don't want my sketch paper to be bigger than my good paper, because I have a tendency to make things go off the page if I get a chance to. So a lot of times I will just actually outline this with paper. So that way, if it wiggles around, I still know I want to stay within that space. Okay, so I want to look at the perspective, and I've got an ellipse here. I want to do a center line down this. And I've got a smaller ellipse at the top. And there's a little, you can kind of break this down into multiple ellipses. There's a small one that is the very top of the arc of the curve on this. And you've got this one here. And then as it goes down, you've got a great big one down at the bottom. So what I'm going to do is I'm going to give myself a center line. And I'm just going to start doing some loose. There's kind of figuring out what my ellipse is there at the top. Actually, that's not really centered very well. Doesn't do much good to have a center line if you don't use it. Okay, so then I can measure, I can do this line down here to this corner of my base. And then I can measure from the center line out with my pencil and see I'm marking how long it is, like that. And then I'm going to take it and I'm going to transfer that, and I'm going to create a mark over here. So that way, this part comes out as far from the center as this part. And then I can create an ellipse here. Now you notice I'm creating a full ellipse. When you do that, rather than just creating this part, it gives you this sense of dimension, of perspective. And so you're not going to use this mark. This mark is going to go away, and this one's going to go away. But it helps you to get it into, it becomes a more even kind of a line there to create it that way. Okay, so there is my base outline. And I've got, I want to get really then I could get my T-square out, which I'm not going to worry about. But I can see that it was not straight. Another cool thing about using this is that if my sugar bowl is cockeyed, then before I transfer it to my good paper, then I can see, I can figure out how I can get it straightened out more. But it's actually, when I look at it, it is a little bit cockeyed in the photograph, and that could be because of the camera could cause that distortion. Okay, so then the arms of this, they come through this way. They're not straight through, they're at a diagonal across there. So I can put this one is lower than this one. This one's up higher in the in perspective. And I can do the same thing down here, so I get my handles come out at the same point. This line across and this line are spaced evenly. They're horizontal to each other. They're not horizontal to the page, but they're horizontal to each other. Now the handle on this side does not come at the outside edge. It's a little bit in from this outside edge. And this is going to be I don't have a very good curve there. So by doing that, then I can help myself make that. And if you remember to use you can use your wrist as a pivot to help you in making curves. So it works kind of like, it helps, I can't remember the word now. Drawing and language do not mix. Okay, so then that little top is more of a, it's a very round ellipse because you're looking at it straight on rather than at an angle. Like these ellipses are you're looking at them from the front. Okay. So then another thing I want to do is I want to kind of give myself where my tablecloth is, so I can kind of it helps to ground this thing onto the table. Do that. That's right now. I think keeping with one thing at a time. Okay. So is that? Okay. So I'm fairly happy with that. It could be better, but I'd have to get rulers and templates out. And that's not going to happen. Not today. Anyway, so now the next step, once I get it on this tissue paper, get it drawn the way I want it on the tissue paper, is I turn the tissue paper over. And so, and I have seen people or demonstrations where they just actually traced the lines. To me, that it just didn't work right for me. It's better if I give myself a little extra leeway there, and because then I can, if I see something, once I start to transfer it, then I have a little extra tracing option there. So now I can lay it on my good paper where I want it. And you want to avoid putting your hand on it, because if you do, then you will get a smudge on your paper. So I have this bridge. You can also just kind of hold your hand up, or just rest your hand very lightly. Then I use a harder pencil. What I used before was an HB pencil. This is a 2H, no, this is an H. And so then I just draw over this again. And I'm not drawing this top ellipse because it's not really there. What it was just a guide for me to get my ellipses in alignment all the way down. Couple more benefits of using the tracing paper is that, say I decide that I want to add another element, I can just take another piece of tracing paper over this, and I can create something else, and I can just transfer this to the sheet, and so I just keep, I use 10 or 15 different layers of tracing paper in creating projects. And so then when you just keep transferring all the elements to the next page, and then when you've got everything done, then you just have one sheet that you need to use to transfer to your good paper. Another benefit is that I always save these at least until my drawing or painting is done. Because if I screw up, then I don't have to start over completely. I can retrace this back onto a clean sheet of paper, and I can start from that point. So now you can see it's drawn very lightly, and I can see some area. I mean, it's not a perfect. It's more of an artistic representation of that. So now what I want to do, now that I have this part, now I can kind of start looking at the highlights, the values, and I can kind of map those out. Like here, up here, I've got this bright highlight. It kind of comes down onto that lip, and then it's also down here. And it's like directly in line with that is this one down at the bottom. There is that lip there. And then there's I'm not going to worry about these little dots right now around the edge. Those are just, that's maybe more detail than we can handle in one day. So I'm just going to look at the major aspects of this. Now I'm seeing a kind of a dark area that's here. And then there's the brownish kind of whatever that reflection is. It's there. Could be my arm, who knows? I'm just kind of lightly mapping out some of the areas on here. That I want to pay attention to. You can see the reflection of those little red knobs and the reflection of the blue handle. Around here. The highlight on my little top knot there. And then the reflection, that little top knot into the metal. I don't want you to be intimidated by this. I want you to, don't expect that you're going to get everything or that everything's going to be the way, just what I want you to do is to start to see the elements. If you're working from it, when you're working from a still life or even something that you're working on, a still life that you've set up, a photograph or whatever, the more you start to look at things and the more you try and dissect them into the different elements, not only does it increase what you see in the world, but it also will help develop your painting skills to be able to figure out color and light and how it all is working. This one I screwed up. I put extra water in it. So this is what happened. This is no, don't do that. This is good. This one's good. These are better. This one, I added extra water and it just washed it all out. And so it's not terribly helpful. So. Okay. I'm going to start with just a very light wash of cobalt around my highlights. Okay, so I'm putting this in a little cup. And I'm just going to take a dab of paint. And I'm going to put water in it. So I'm creating a very light wash. Okay. And that's too big a brush. Okay, so this is a number 4 brush. And even my highlight in my little top knot is going to be blue. So I'm just trying, I'm going to, anything that's not super white is going to get a layer of blue. Got some really dark lines here, which isn't always a benefit.
Cheryl, what are you painting? Because it's hard to see. Oh, the top.
Yeah. And I'm starting with that because although we have some bright whites, we also have some very, very light areas. And you don't want to start out with too much color. Because you always work from your lightest colors to your darkest colors. Like I say, everything that's not super white gets to be blue, a light blue. There, so you can see the parts that are still little bits of white. This is total white here. This is white as the highlights in the metal. So I could actually do. I can actually add this. Now that this is mostly dry. For the areas that are just a tiny bit darker, I can use the same wash and just do a second layer, a second glaze. I'm going to take some of this cerulean or manganese blue, and I'm going to do a layer on my handles. I'm going to put a layer of red. You say, but there's no red. I don't see red. And if I put a layer of blue, of dark blue over that, and maybe a layer of warm sepia over that, it'll turn black. Well, see, you can start to see I have starting to build up some values there. They're still very light, but it's starting to look a little bit like metal. One of the things I forgot to say last week, which I'm hoping you all know anyway, that when you finish painting, you want to wash your brushes, and you can use a little bit of dish soap if you want, and just what you're doing is, under the water, and you always work up like this. You don't want to go like this on your brushes. You always want, because you want them to continue to stay on a point. And then when you've got them nice and clean, then I keep them in little jars so that they dry with the, because if these start to, you lay them down and they get smushed up against something and they dry like that, you never get them straight again. So they can last a long time, but they gotta be taken care of. I see that I got a little over. Where that came from? I must have had extra water in there. See, this is how you wash out mistakes. If you're lucky, you can get it almost back. Which that will never be that will never be back all the way. It'll never be totally white around the edge there. Before I add a second color in the gray process, I want to make some of these areas a little bit darker in the blue. I'm using two different blues. This is cerulean or manganese blue, and then this is a cobalt blue. And the manganese is the local color of the handles. And because I'm putting it here because there's that reflection of this handle into the picture part of that. And the reason I dab like that over the wet paint is not because I think I have too much paint, because I want the texture. And I love the way that it gets, there's some light areas and some a little darker. And to me, that is the beauty of watercolor. And so even though what I'm doing is a fairly detailed drawing, when you look at it, when you look up close, you see these areas that are loose, that have a sense of what watercolor is about. Okay, so now I'm going to do, and when I did these up here, and this one I used a lemon yellow, and this one was the gamboge, and this is awfully brown. I don't like this. The lemon yellow is a much cooler yellow, and I'm liking this. Looks a little bit more like what I'm wanting. So now I'm going to do a layer of lemon yellow over the next level of grays. Actually, it's cadmium yellow pale, which is about the same as a lemon yellow. But it's very, very light. And that's what a cool yellow looks like. If you ever wondered what on earth is a cool yellow, that's it.
Cheryl, I'm sorry, where was the yellow going?
It's going to go over some of these blue, where the values are going to get darker, where it's going to be more of a gray.
Oh, okay. Thank you.
This is where glazing happens to, right now it's going to be green. And then we're going to add some red over it. And it's going to turn gray. And this is where it's important to let it dry between layers. And while that's drying, I'm going to do a little bit of shadow. Start the shadows on the inside of the handle. Using cobalt blue over the manganese blue.
Cheryl, can I ask you what green did you use? I'm sorry.
No green. That was not a green. That was
Yellow.
Yeah, it was it's like a lemon yellow. It's a very pale yellow. So it's either cadmium yellow pale or lemon yellow or whatever the lightest yellow that you have.
The lightest yellow. Okay.
Yeah,
Thank you.
sure.
So you went over the darker blue areas. Is that what?
Right.
Yeah.
Can you see? So that's how it turned green.
So you did it on the lid and on the close to the one of the handles, correct? Yes, on the like around the handle.
No, I
inside?
did it okay, this is cobalt blue over
Yes.
the manganese.
Yeah.
This is the layer of blue.
Yeah.
And then the yellow over it.
Okay, yeah, that's what
So
I thought.
blue and yellow together make green, and so that's why it looks so green.
Okay, thank you.
And then we're going to add red over the top of that, and then it's going to turn gray.
Okay. So first yellow and then red.
First, yeah, and you can mix them in different levels. You don't have to start with blue. I started with blue. You could put the yellow down first and then
Mhm.
put the blue and then the red. And you just keep building up those layers
Yeah, yeah, yeah.
until it gets to be the color that you want,
Okay,
the depth
thanks.
that you want. Look at this old top knot. Some cobalt. Over the red. Okay, so now I'm going to add a layer of alizarin crimson. It's not great yet. It takes some more blue to get it to gray. You want to cover up all that yellow. The gray is coming. So I'm just going over this with some fresh water, just to soften edges. I can tell that my paper's getting distressed. I need to let it dry completely before I put any more on it. I think eventually I'm going to add a layer of a dark blue, like either an ultramarine or the Indian throne, and to just give it more depth. But I think it needs to rest. So, and I'm sure yours probably need to rest too. I'm back. This has had a couple of days to dry now, and I'm looking at it, and I love all the color within the shadows and the reflections here. It's not totally realistic. However, I think it's beautiful, and I'm not sure that I'm going to add any more to these areas. There's a lot of other parts that need some attention, and it will as I go along, it will develop. Like in here, this needs to be darkened to make this highlight pop. And so actually this is Indian throne blue that I'm putting on there, and just a very pale wash. I'm also using Indian throne around here to create the very dark values that are right along the edge there. And then up here, see, we've got to make this darker. This is where we get into the details. Because like I said before, the more you look, the more you see. light is almost directly overhead, so we really don't have a lot of shadow. Okay, so I'm just going to keep working on this a little bit. And I'll be back. All right, I think this is done. I just want to go over some of the little details that I added. I put in a little bit of this color because it was there. I'm not sure what the value of it is, but it was there. So now it's part of my image. I did some Indian throne using a dark blue. And actually, here where the spoon holder goes, I had Indian throne there, and I just added some warm sepia right in the center of it to give it a little bit more depth there. I went over all of this again with some Indian throne and added a little bit of dark green as shadowing on my those red knobs, to kind of, because green is the complement, so it makes a good shadow color for red. So, and then even though in the original, in the photograph, there really isn't any color or shadow value for under this sugar bowl for the tablecloth. I just added a very light layer of blue just to give it a base so that you can see. Whoops, that wasn't what I wanted to do. Anyway, just so this little sugar bowl isn't floating in space. So I'm gonna say this is done, and I can't wait to see what you come up with. Thanks for watching.